Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to cover how the atmosphere first became oxygenated and learn about the main types of phytoplankton on this planet. Let's get started. First up is a little history of the oxygen levels in Earth's atmosphere. Recall that early Earth's atmosphere had no oxygen, but all animals, except for some parasites, require oxygen to live, so they couldn't evolve until Earth's atmosphere became oxygenated. To put that another way, Earth's habitability for humans and animals in general is contingent upon its atmosphere possessing lots of O2 gas. Well, the lack of oxygen in the atmosphere all changed with an event that is aptly named the Great Oxygenation Event that occurred about 2.4 billion years ago. The Great Oxygenation Event, or GOE, is shown on the timeline of Earth's atmospheric oxygen to the right. PAL, or PAL, which is on the y-axis, means present atmospheric levels. So the y-axis is the percent of present atmospheric levels of oxygen. And you can see that for the first 1.5 billion years or so of life, there was 0% oxygen in the atmosphere relative to present day levels. Then it spikes up quickly if we're talking about geologic timescales. You can also see that it took more than 1 billion years for it to increase to levels near what we see today. In this lecture, we are going to answer how Earth ended up with so much oxygen in its atmosphere. Atmospheric oxygen was made possible by the evolution of cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria are photosynthetic bacteria like Prochlorococcus and Senecacoccus, and they evolved oxygenic photosynthesis sometime between 3.4 and 2.9 billion years ago. They did this by making changes and combining systems in place for something called anoxygenic photosynthesis. Various forms of anoxygenic photosynthesis already existed when oxygenic photosynthesis evolved. Anoxygenic photosynthesis is the same idea as oxygenic photosynthesis. It just doesn't use water for electrons, and so it doesn't make oxygen. Pictured is a filamentous cyanobacterium. These are single-celled organisms that can group together kind of like a commune. They are still single-celled organisms because they don't require the filamentous lifestyle, but they often grow better this way. And cyanobacteria are oxygenic photosynthesizers. I also included some purple sulfur bacteria, which is a type of anoxygenic photosynthesizer. You don't see these guys everywhere because they require a strict anoxic environment. The evolution of oxygenic photosynthesis was the first step to oxygenating the atmosphere. The second step was to hide the organic matter that was produced so that respiration couldn't use up the oxygen right away. Let me explain that further. In oxygenic photosynthesis, for every one carbon atom fixed from the atmosphere, one molecule of O2 is created and released into the atmosphere. Remember, sunlight is used to split water and harvest electrons, creating oxygen as a byproduct. The opposite happens in respiration. Oxygen is consumed, sugars are burned, and water is recreated. If photosynthesis and respiration were always in perfect balance globally, then no oxygen would accumulate in the atmosphere. For oxygen to accumulate, some process needs to hide the organic matter, or sugar, away so it can't be respired. It's like hiding candy away from a kid who wants to eat it. For every carbon atom in sugar that is hidden away, one molecule of oxygen can stay in the atmosphere. The hiding place on Earth is rocks. All the reduced organic carbon, which is carbohydrates and sugars, is hidden away in sedimentary rocks. For further reading, I highly recommend this article that I cited at the bottom of the slide. The burial of organic carbon made by photosynthesis in ocean sediments and on land has allowed oxygen to accumulate in the atmosphere over geologic time. This has allowed for eukaryotes and eventually multicellular organisms to evolve. We've mentioned this before, but I just wanted to mention it here again. It has also allowed for more biogeochemical cycles to exist. Oxygen is a strong oxidant, and biogeochemical cycles are all redox reactions. The last point we will discuss in this lecture is that it allowed for the ozone layer to form, which allowed organisms to colonize terrestrial habitats. These second two points we will discuss later in the lecture as well. Just to hammer home how important cyanobacteria are, the oxygen you are breathing now was produced by a plant or phytoplankton, and cyanobacteria are a type of phytoplankton, somewhere on Earth, potentially a long time ago. And cyanobacteria were the organisms to first evolve the ability to generate that oxygen. So to summarize, there are two key processes that allow oxygen to accumulate in the atmosphere. First is sunlight-powered oxygenic photosynthesis. Second is the burial of the organic matter made by photosynthesis in Earth's crust, including their incorporation into very old continental rocks. Here's an excerpt from the article I mentioned regarding the processes controlling the flux and accumulation of oxygen on Earth. Water is photobiologically split with solar energy by algae in the ocean and plants on land. It should be noted that cyanobacteria are also important here. A very small fraction of the organic matter produced by these organisms is buried in sediments and ultimately tectonically added to continents and subducted deep into Earth's mantle, thereby permitting oxygen levels to accumulate in the atmosphere. The balance between burial of organic matter and its oxidation, the oxidation of organic matter means respiration, appears to have been tightly controlled over the past 500 million years. Deposited marine organic sediments will eventually get subducted at convergent plate boundaries. The CO2 that was fixed and buried will return to the atmosphere via volcanic activity, and the oldest ocean crust is only about 200 million years old. So even though this takes a very long time, it doesn't completely remove carbon and keep oxygen in the atmosphere indefinitely. In order to really hide the candy for a really long period of time, greater than 1 billion years, marine sedimentary rocks must be taken out of the Wilson cycle, which is the process of continents merging and rifting and the opening and closing of ocean basins. The major mechanism for the burial of organic matter is sedimentation and eventual accretion into cratons. Cratons are old and stable parts of the continental lithosphere that survive Wilson cycles, so they are generally found in the interiors of tectonic plates. Earth's cratons are visualized on the map to the right. When oceanic plates are subducted under continental plates, a fraction of the organic sediments are added to the continent, and this increases continental mass. It originally forms coastal mountains, but it can move inland. This is a dramatic illustration of the interconnectedness of Earth's different systems, including the lithosphere, specifically plate tectonics, the biosphere, life, the oceans, which are part of the hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. Here are some time series plots of oxygen levels in the atmosphere over time. It should be apparent that there were periods where O2 had not yet reached current levels. There was also a period of time in the Phanerozoic eon that had significantly more oxygen than current levels. This was around 300 million years ago. Let's talk about why now. The answer to higher O2 levels around 300 million years ago is the Carboniferous period. The Carboniferous period was famous for its vast swamp forests, so lots of vegetation was photosynthesizing and making organic matter and oxygen. The period is actually named after supervast coal deposits that originated during that time frame. Coal is made when plant matter is buried. Swamps are a great place to bury organic matter because the sediments and water are typically very anoxic, which slows down or completely prevents decomposition and respiration. This coal then gets buried under layers and layers and is subjected to high heat and pressure, which turns it into coal. This organic matter is then buried under layers and layers and is subjected to high heat and pressure, which eventually turns it into coal. This is the process of hiding the organic matter, or candy, that we have talked about in this lecture thus far. So the oxygen got made and stayed in the atmosphere. Some other fun notes about the Carboniferous period are that dinosaurs evolved much later from some reptiles that had migrated onto land during the Carboniferous period, and there was a huge diversification of insects during this time. Like I said before, one of the benefits of atmospheric oxygenation is that oxygen made current biogeochemical cycles possible. There are lots of complicated chemical processes depicted in this image, some biotic and some abiotic. I don't expect you to know every redox reaction shown. The take-home is that all the cycles are interconnected. For example, oxygen can be used to oxidize ammonia to nitrate. Nitrate can be used to oxidize hydrogen sulfide to sulfate. Sulfate can be used to oxidize methane, and so on. The nitrogen cycle interacts with the sulfur cycle and the carbon cycle and more. Biogeochemical cycles involve changes in oxidation state. That is what redox reactions are. We need oxygen for many of the chemical species shown to exist. and so many biogeochemical cycles wouldn't exist in their current state without it. Another one of the benefits of atmospheric oxygenation is that oxygen allowed for the ozone layer to form. Ozone, O3, is derived from oxygen, O2. Oxygen had to be present in order for the ozone layer to form. The ozone layer is a key feature for the habitability of Earth. The ozone layer protects us from harmful UV rays. UV radiation destroys DNA. So it was necessary before multicellular life could colonize terrestrial habitats. The ozone layer formed about 2 billion years ago. Even though all photosynthesis was microbial in the past, a significant portion of photosynthesis is still microbial today. Microbial photosynthesizers are called phytoplankton, which literally translates to plant drifter. These microbes are single-celled organisms that float in the ocean and can't swim against currents, so they drift where the ocean takes them. Some are capable of movement, just not large migrations or swimming against currents. Cyanobacteria are prokaryotic phytoplankton. Several single-celled eukaryotes like diatoms, coccolithophores, and dinoflagellates are also microbial photosynthesizers, or phytoplankton. This particular picture is a satellite image of a coccolithophore bloom just southwest of the UK. So let's meet a few microbial photosynthesizers, also known as phytoplankton. First up are cyanobacteria. These are prokaryotic phytoplankton. These maps show their abundances in the ocean. You can see that Prochlorococcus likes warmer equatorial waters more and get quite abundant. Despite not getting quite as abundant at lower latitudes, Senecacoccus has a wider range and is found in very cold regions of the ocean. Obviously, living cyanobacteria will be in the upper couple hundred meters since that is where sunlight can penetrate, but dead phytoplankton, or organisms that feed on the phytoplankton, can sink and deliver organic matter to lower reaches of the ocean. Next up on our introduction to phytoplankton are diatoms. These are a type of eukaryotic phytoplankton, also known as algae. There are types of multicellular algae as well. Seaweed is an example of a multicellular algae, but we are just going to talk about single-celled types of algae in this lecture, since they are the most abundant forms in the ocean. Back to diatoms. Diatoms, of which there are many types, are the biggest type of phytoplankton. They make silica frustules, which is a glass shell or skeleton. The silica frustule increases drag, which is important because they are big and heavy, so anything that helps them float is helpful. It also decreases predation, because who wants to chew on glass? And frankly, it looks really cool under a microscope. Next up are dinoflagellates. These are also a type of eukaryotic phytoplankton. These algae have large size ranges, from 5 to 50 microns. They can form harmful red tides and brown tides. These events can be harmful due to toxins or because the massive quantities of organic matter that are produced lead heterotrophs to use up all the oxygen, and the anoxic water kills the animals and produces smelly gases. The upper right image is showing a harmful red tide, also known as a harmful algal bloom, or HAB. The dinoflagellate Lingolodidium polyedra is also known for its bioluminescence. That is shown in the bottom image. All dinoflagellates are motile, because they have flagella, which is a little tail they can use to get around. You can see that in the upper left image. The flagellum allows a dinoflagellate to avoid predators. They can move up and down in the water column to find nutrients or more light. They just can't swim against currents with it. Last up on our introduction to the different types of phytoplankton are coccolithophores, which are the tiniest eukaryotic phytoplankton. Coccolithophores have calcium carbonate tests composed of multiple coccoliths, or plates. That is visible in the upper left image pretty well. You may know calcium carbonate better as chalk. These algae can form huge blooms over much of the northern Atlantic. I included a picture of a coccolithophore bloom off the coast of Devon, England. Another interesting factoid about these phytoplankton are that fossilized coccolithophores make up the White Cliffs of Dover. So why did I just take a time out to talk about different types of phytoplankton? Well, I'm personally very fascinated by them, and I've studied them in marine systems all over the world, including harmful algal bloom species. But beyond that, they are super important to the Earth system. Phytoplankton are the basis of marine food webs, just like plants are the basis of terrestrial food webs. This is on top of contributing significantly to global oxygen concentration in the past and present day. Phytoplankton directly feed everything from microscopic zooplankton to small fish to multi-ton whales. Phytoplankton also indirectly feed everything else in the ocean too, similar to how plants indirectly feed carnivores. Either phytoplankton-derived organic matter or organic matter from higher trophic levels that are based on phytoplankton primary production is what sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Once there, the organic matter is either respired, but still out of contact with the atmosphere for a while, or the organic matter, the organic carbon, is buried. The process of organic carbon being transported to the deep ocean is called the biological pump, and we will talk about this much more in some other lectures. I included a picture on the right for reference here if you want to check it out now. That concludes the material. Let's go through and review the main points. Early Earth's atmosphere had no oxygen, but multicellular life couldn't evolve until it was present. Two key processes were required for oxygen to eventually accumulate in the atmosphere: oxygenic photosynthesis and hiding away small fractions of organic material created by oxygenic photosynthesis. To achieve present oxygen concentrations, some organic sediments had to be taken out of the Wilson cycle and deposited onto really old continental rocks. The Carboniferous period, about 300 million years ago, had high oxygen concentrations because of its extensive swamp forests and coal formation. The accumulation of O2 in the atmosphere allowed for biogeochemical cycles to develop and the ozone layer to form. Phytoplankton were and are extremely important to Earth's oxygen concentrations. Thanks for sitting through the lecture. To test your learning, I suggest you review the material and make sure you can answer these questions.